Hey folks, this is the legislative update for the week.
Tell us about the No Propaganda Act.
So the No Propaganda Act is a bill that I've introduced in the past. It's to defund the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, or National Public Radio, among other things. Listen folks, if NPR and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting wants to be a left-wing propaganda organization, God bless them. I think they should do that. They should go get sponsors and get advertising dollars and so on and so forth. But if they're going to use American tax dollars to tell only one side of the story, that's government-led propaganda, government-paid-for propaganda. I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think your tax dollars should go to it. I don't think there's any question at this point that that's what they are. So I've introduced that this week. The big thing for the week is the supplementals. 4 separate bills that are merged into one after the fact. It's a gimmick in Washington, D.C. I don't like any of that. As you know, I like single subject bills. Here's the other thing. I was on my way down here today. They said votes were going to be at 1:30. When I'm on my way down here, it's not the time for the leadership to call me and tell me that they moved the votes up to 12:30. So I missed a couple of them, but I'm going to tell you how I would have voted regardless. So it was 4 separate bills of foreign aid spending, nothing of the border, by the way. This does nothing for the border. The border's not included. So if you hear that this is a border bill, that's an abject and straight up lie. It is not a border bill. So the 4 components are the Indo-Pacific, because we don't want to say Taiwan because it might irritate the Chinese, Ukraine, Israel, and then some other components of how things are funded and generally going after Iran. So let's start with Ukraine. First of all, I voted no on all 4 of those provisions. I want to support Ukraine. I want to support the people of Ukraine. I'm against Vladimir Putin. Here's what we didn't do. We didn't find any way to pay for it. We're paying for pensions, not just munitions, but we're paying for general government services, including their border. Our border's wide open, and we're trying to secure their border. Finally, no plan for success whatsoever. We're just dumping money onto this thing, and we have no idea where it's going. So we tried to have amendments to fix some of those things. Mine in particular, for instance, said there had to be an open election, just like the United States of America had during the Civil War. That said this is a democracy, yet they suspended elections. Let's have an election and at least prove it's a democracy before we spend $60 billion in Ukraine. So that's that one. The Indo-Pacific. First of all, Taiwan has already paid for their weapons systems. We're just not giving them the weapon systems because we're giving them to everyone else. So this was just a messaging bill hooked on to the Ukraine bill to get people to support Ukraine because they didn't want to not support Taiwan. As you know, China's involved. People want to be seen as supporting Taiwan, so they threw it in there trying to force people to vote for the Ukraine bill. That's how things are done in Washington, D.C. And then finally, the Israel bill. No one has been stronger on Israel my whole life. My amendments on this bill, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to say, look, I tried, I put my amendments out there, they failed, so I gave it a good old college try, and I couldn't get my way, so okay, I'll vote for the bill because I tried and I failed. But they wouldn't even, our leadership wouldn't even allow us to have the amendments on the floor, so there was no vote on any of the amendments. I'm not gonna have on my conscience, and I don't think you want it on your conscience, that you're sending your money to Israel at the same time you're sending your money to Hamas. That was the same bill, $9 billion to Hamas, $17 billion to Israel. Pick one side. I can't criticize the Biden administration of being on both sides of the war and then vote to be on both sides of the war. I'm not looking Israeli soldiers in the face that have cleared terrorists out of Gaza 1, 2, 3, 4 times and telling them you got to go back because we sent your tax dollars to Gaza and to Hamas. I'm not interested in doing that. And then finally, the last portion, which was this, we're going to seize Russian assets. First of all, the United States of America, the bulk of the assets don't belong to the United States of America. It's a gimmick to try and say we're going to pay for Ukraine. We're not going to pay for Ukraine any more than the loan guarantees of this money are ever going to be paid for. Ukraine doesn't have the money to pay for them, and they're not going to have it anytime soon. And the loan guarantees can be forgiven and likely, well, let's face it, folks, they're going to be forgiven. So those were my votes on those bills. I thought you should know. and the bill passed anyhow. It's just an amendment to the Senate bill. This is essentially the Senate package just ratified by the House with a bunch of gimmicks. So I voted no on those things for those reasons. I appreciate your interest in what's happening in foreign policy and United States policy. With that, that's the recap for the week. God bless you and your families, and be safe out there.